Good morning. Welcome to Virginia Beach Friends of VBIANDS. Our special speaker today is Sharon Lund, who comes to us from Maui, Hawaii. She's had a wonderful experience. Her life has been changed, and she's made a big contribution to humankind. We'd like to introduce Sharon. Take it away, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Dick, for inviting me to join your IONS meeting. It's such a difference that you make to invite these people in and hear these experiences, because as you said, it can be transformational for all people. So I have been dancing with life and death throughout my life. It started at a very young age. When I was 3 years old until I was 12 years old, I was sexually abused by my grandfather. And I couldn't tell my mom or anybody because he said if I did, he would kill my mom. As I was being sexually abused, though, every time that happened, my spirit was lifted out of my body. So I had an out-of-body experience, and an angel, a spirit guide, she didn't have wings, but a spirit guide came to me. She took me out of my body, and she took me to the park to play, and she took me to the playroom, and she took me to the zoo, and took me all these different places. And she taught me how to communicate with the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. And through her wisdom and through her love for me, I was able to understand that we're all connected and how we can communicate with the different kingdoms. This is my first encounter with the spirit realm on that way. I used to pray to God every night that my grandfather would die. And when he did die, when I was 12 years old, I felt guilty and felt to blame for that. So there was a lot of guilt stuffed down on me and a lot of anger towards myself to know that I may have caused that. Well, obviously I didn't, but as a child, I thought that. My self-esteem was quite low because of the sexual abuse, and I was skinny also, and I had dyslexia, so I was called stupid, dumb, twiggy, anything you could think of to put me down. And I got in my second relationship, my second marriage, to a gentleman by the name of Bill in 1983. My first relationship, or my first marriage, was to my daughter's father, Tom, and my daughter, Janine, and that was back in 1969. But in 1983, I married Bill, and we knew each other for about 6 months, and he was very, very kind, and he had 3 kids, and I felt very close to him, and his kids loved me, and Janine loved them, and we felt like a real family. And the day that we got married, his whole attitude changed, and he called me ugly. He said I'd never amount to anything. I was stupid. He hated me. He didn't know why he was marrying me. And I was just shocked. And I was sitting in the car going out to get married on the 50-yard line of the Rose Bowl, because he was the manager of the Rose Bowl, and we were getting married at the 50-yard line. And my daughter was in the back seat, and his kids were in the back seat, and I started to cry, and he said, "Shut up, don't you cry." And then Janine started crying, and then he started yelling at her. And I was just, my whole body was just shaking, and I didn't know how to handle this. And when we got out of the car, my mom and dad flew in from Hawaii for the wedding, and his aunt and uncle flew in from Michigan for the wedding. And I told one of his aunts, I said, "I don't think I can go through with this." And she says, "Oh, Bill just has the jitters. Don't worry about it." And as I'm walking out to the 50-yard line, I'm saying, "God, what am I supposed to do?" And it was like 1,000 voices just screamed out louder than I've ever heard anybody scream, "Don't marry him." But I ignored that voice. I stood on the 50-yard line and I married him. From that day forward, for the next 6 months that we were married, the abuse, mental and physical abuse, got worse and worse and worse. And I became anorexic. Got to the point where I couldn't eat, I couldn't feed the kids, and I ended up getting a divorce from him after 6 months, and went to the lawyer. And the lawyer asked Bill, "Why did you marry her?" And he says, "I married her to get custody of my kids and for her money." So the judge stamped my divorce thing nulled, fraud. He was a fraud. For the next probably 3 months that Janine and I were living a couple blocks away from Bill and his family, the anorexia got worse and worse, and I had to have Janine go to the store and buy her own groceries or eat at her friend's house because the smell of food just nauseated me. And it got to the point where I had to send her to Hawaii to live with my mom and to her other grandparents and her dad. And as I knew that she was being cared for, I knew she was being loved and she was being protected and nurtured. But at that point, I was broken. I was completely broken down and I could not take care of her. And she was the love of my life and is the love of my life, but this was the best thing for her. And so one night, after I don't know how many days it was, I was just rocking back and forth and I didn't have the curtains open and it was dark in the house. I wouldn't turn the lights on. And I just kept rocking back and forth. And I decided that I would commit suicide, that the pain and suffering of hearing my grandfather and hearing all these other voices and hearing Bill was just way too much for me. So I went into the bathroom and I took a bottle of pills. And as soon as I drank some water with the pills, I immediately threw them up because I had nothing in my stomach and it wouldn't hold it down. And I just got more discouraged and I got angrier and angry at God. It's like, why? Why can't this happen? And a couple days later, I went into the bathroom. Actually, I think it was the next day. I went into the bathroom and I placed a razor on my left wrist and I said, God, please forgive me for what I'm about to do. If there's anything I need to know before I kill myself, let me know now. And immediately, the entire bathroom room filled up with this brilliant bright light, brighter than we've ever seen on this earth plane. And immediately I felt calm and at peace. And I felt this immense love just flow through my being. And I heard the voice and it said, my child, it's not your time to die. Get yourself in the hospital. And when you get out, you will become a healer. You will teach around the world and you will write books. Well, Dick and people, that made no sense to me because I was a secretary. But I got myself into the hospital the next day, and I was in the hospital for anorexia and suicide attempts for 3 months. And while I was in the hospital, two spirit beings came towards me. One, he presented himself, I could see him physically, and I could see through him at the same time. His name is Scimitar. He's about 4'9". He had a long beard. He had a staff. And he said he was here to teach me the Eastern philosophy and Eastern way of healing. And Scimitar was with me from 1984 until 1999. And I'll tell you about that a little bit later. And then another spirit being came towards me and said, you will not be able to see me, but I want you to write down everything you hear from me. And his name was Viracocha. Well, in Viracocha, later on, I found out that Viracocha is known as Peru as the creator of all. So as I'm going through the hospital, I'm getting treatment, working on my emotions, and have not told my mom and dad about my sexual abuse as a child. And my therapist says, you have to tell your mom and dad about your sexual abuse. And I called my mom and dad in Hawaii, and my dad said if he was alive, if my grandfather was alive, that he would have killed him. And I truly believe that my dad would have done that if my grandfather was alive. And my mom said, well, at least you didn't have it as bad as me. And that really hurt. But then I realized that, her mom was a prostitute. She lived in and out of foster care. She was extremely abused beyond anything that I could imagine. And I had to just accept that for what it was and just leave it as it was. But I know that as soon as I mentioned and said that I was sexually abused for 9 years, that a healing started upon me because I spoke the truth and I didn't have to hold on to the secret anymore. And I knew that my mom would not be killed, the little girl thinking, oh my God, grandpa's going to kill my mom, even though he's dead. So when I got out of the hospital, I went to a psychic. I enjoy going to psychics from time to time, or medium. And I went to a psychic, and her name was Linda Dutton, and she wore a white caftan, and she had really long blonde hair and big, beautiful crystal blue eyes. And she looked like an earth angel, and that's what I call her. And Linda said, I had the reading, and she says, what I hear and what I see is that you will become a healer. You will teach around the world, and you'll write books. I told her nothing about my NDE. I told her nothing about the message that I received from Infinite Spirit or God. I didn't tell her any of that. And she says, Sharon, I'm also a counselor and a therapist. She says, I'd be more than happy to work with you. So I worked with and studied with Linda for 3 years, working on the inner child, working on self-esteem. She taught me about energy healing, the chakras, stress reduction, meditation, visualization. So my whole life started transforming, and I became one, and I became whole and complete. And my daughter came home right after the hospital after 3 months. And I started teaching my daughter these techniques too, on energy work and how to do things. And she taught her friends and things, but it was really a blessing. And I started working in the AIDS community in Los Angeles, teaching gay men body, mind, spirit modalities, visualization, meditation, body dialogue, emotional clearing. And these gay men were so loving and so kind and so appreciative that me, not being gay, accepted them for who they were and saw them for who they were. And a lot of gay men that I was working with were AIDS infected, and they had Kaposi sarcoma, which is the purple lesions or brown lesions on their body. And some of them were wasting, like 100 pounds or less than that. And I had no fear working around them, and I just embraced them. And Janine embraced these guys, just like these gay guys, like they were our family. We deeply, deeply loved them, and we felt a deep connection to them. And then all of a sudden, the gay men started dying, and I started going to all these funerals, and I started helping gay men to leave their legacy, which was basically recording their life story and then creating a memorial that represented their life story that I can talk about a little bit later. Well, my mom and dad did not like the idea that I was working in the AIDS community. They were afraid in 1996, when I started working with them, they were afraid that Janine and I would become infected. They didn't understand how the virus was transmitted. They didn't understand the virus. They were uneducated. And they said that there was a Dan Rather's AIDS special entitled AIDS Hits Home, and they would videotape it for me. And at Christmas time, they would bring it to me and show it to me. Well, I thought this is great. This is a great way to educate them, because Dan Rather has a national show on AIDS, and we'll sit down together and we'll have a great educational thing, and they'll accept these guys and they'll accept them into my home and the whole bit. Well, in a matter of just a short amount of time of watching the video, as we're sitting down to watch it, my ex-husband Bill was on it. And he was saying that he and his other wife were both infected and they were dying from AIDS complications, and that he was bisexual. I was in shock. Bill was, he was blacked out to some degree. You could see his mustache, you could see what he was wearing, and you could hear his voice. And I knew it was Bill. And I screamed, that's Bill, that's Bill. And my parents said, no, it's not. And I said, it is. And I knew that they had only met him one time when we got married, so they really didn't know Bill, but I knew in my mind and heart that it was him. And so I immediately got into the bedroom and I called Bill. And I said, Bill, I just saw you on a Dan Rather's AIDS special entitled AIDS Hit Home. He says, that wasn't me. And I said, Bill, I know it was. And he says, it wasn't me. And so I said, okay. And I hung up the phone. And after I got off the phone, I heard Veracocha said, my child, it was him, and you need to get tested. So I called the test site next day. It was at Christmas time during the Christmas holidays. And I called the test site, anonymous test site. And then the anonymous test site said, well, it's going to take 3 months to get in because the waiting list is that long. And during those 3 months, I only told my sister, my minister, my boyfriend that I thought I might be infected. I didn't tell anybody else. I just did not want to say anything to my daughter or my parents. And after 3 months of waiting, I finally went in, and the council looked at me and said, "What are you here for?" And I says, "To be tested." And he says, "Tested for what?" I mean, he knew it was at AIDS clinic. He knew it was for the AIDS virus, for HIV. And I says, "I believe I might be infected." And he says, "Well, you need 2 numbers and 2 letters." So I said, "My numbers are AB and 12." And that's how I was identified, as AB12. And I sat down in the waiting room, and there were probably maybe 6 guys around me, gay men, and we're watching a video about AIDS, things that I already knew about because I had been working in the AIDS community for so long. And I knew about AIDS, and I thought, well, okay, I'll still watch it. And then I was called in. My doctor, Gary, called me in, and he talked to me and asked why think I might be infected. And I explained it to him. So he took my blood test, and he says, "Okay, we'll call you back in 3 weeks." Well, oh my God, those 3 weeks were hell waiting for that results. And I went back into the clinic 3 weeks later, and Gary called me into his office, and he was looking down at the paper, and then he looked me in the eye, and then he looked down at the paper. He says, "Sharon, I don't know how to tell you this." He says, "I've never had to tell a heterosexual woman before, but you're infected." And I just went numb. I thought I was going to pass out, and his mouth was moving and he was talking. I could see his mouth moving and him talking, and I couldn't hear anything. I was just numb. And then he kind of felt that I was going to pass out. And he said, "Just put your head between your legs." And I did. And he said, "Breathe, breathe, breathe." And I did. And I got back at my composure as much as I possibly could. And he says, I just don't know what to tell you. And he says, "I have a bunch of brochures for you. And these are support groups," which I knew about. One was Louise Hay, Hayride. I had been going to that because I've been taking the gay men, some of my clients, to Louise Hay's Hayride as a support group. So I knew about these groups, and I knew it was available in the AIDS community. And anyhow, I have all these brochures in my hand, and he said, "You can go ahead and walk out the back door." And as I'm walking out towards the back door, my legs almost collapsed, and he grabbed me and he brought me into another room, and he says, "Why don't you just sit here and lay here until you feel better?" And so I walked out the door finally, and I got in the car, and I looked at the brochures, and I put them in my glove compartment, slammed them shut, and just cried for probably 20 minutes and just kept shaking my head, "How can this be? How can this be?" And I got home, and I called my minister, I called my boyfriend, and I called my sister, and I said, "I am infected." And they said, "You will come through this." And I said, "I know I will." I had never met another woman infected. In the AIDS community in LA, there were no heterosexual women that I knew of. And I was working in the AIDS community that were infected. I was working with AIDS Project Los Angeles, Being Alive, and Shanti. And there were no women infected at that time, heterosexual women. So I decided I was not going to tell my mom or dad or my daughter, because if they heard the truth, I know that their emotions would bring my energy down, and their fear would bring my fear in. And I did not want fear. I only wanted to hold on to the truth, and I wanted to hold on to the hope and the trust, which I heard, "You'll be okay." And I had to start practicing what I was teaching these other gay men, like, see the virus in your body and believe there's a Pac-Man eating the virus away. Do visualization, do stress reduction, do emotional clearing. So everything that I was teaching the gay men, I now applied to myself even more. And I went to the doctors, and the doctor said I had to take AZT, which was the first drug that had come out. And I said to the doctor, I said, "I will think about that. I have to go home and do a meditation and see if it's for my highest good." And he says, "Go ahead." So I went home that night and I did a meditation, and I asked, "Is it for my highest good to take AZT?" And what I heard was, "No, my child, it's not for your highest good." So I called my doctor back the next day and I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take AZT. And he says, all I can tell you, Sharon, is you will die within 6 months if you do not take this AZT. And I says, I hear you. Okay, thank you. I'll find another doctor. And during that time, right after I left my doctor and fired my doctor, basically, I started looking for a holistic doctor. And while I was looking for a holistic doctor that taught body, mind, and spirit and did vitamins and minerals and all these different holistic treatment, acupunctures and everything else, and massage, all these different treatments, what happened was that I realized that I got my affairs in order during that short amount of time, got my will, got my durable power of attorney, got everything together. And then I heard in meditation, my child, why have you made your doctor God? He doesn't know how or when you're going to die. And that was like a major wake-up call for me because I had bought into his death sentence. And I ended up finding a holistic doctor, Dr. Joan Priestley. And she was very, very well known throughout the United States and in Europe for holistic treatments. And she became a very good friend of mine, as well as a doctor of mine. And she said, Sharon, you have to go public with your story. You have to let people know that women can and are getting infected. So we did an interview on radio, and then we did a couple more on radio. And before I did that, I asked my daughter for permission to do it because I said, Janine, I'm going to go public. I'm going to talk about being infected. I said, I won't use your name. They won't know who you are, but I have to tell this. I have to tell my story. And she agreed to it. Well, one of the newspapers picked up the story and interviewed me and found out that Janine went to school at Fairfax High School. And in the newspaper article, they put Sharon's daughter, Janine, at Fairfax High School. And I was devastated. And I thought, this was total betrayal. And I didn't know how to handle it with Janine. And she says, Mom, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And what I found out and what I discovered and what I felt was that all of Janine's friends became my friends. They became my support. And when I came out public, I lost all but one friend. Even my very best friend that was pregnant and then gave birth, I could not hold her daughter. I could not see her daughter. I could not enter their home. I could not do anything with them. So I lost all but one friend. And then Janine's friends became my support system at the time, along with the AIDS community and the gay men. So it was a hard time, a difficult time, but a rewarding time. Because before long, I started, there was an agency in New York, Admire Entertainment, and they heard about my story and they hired me as a lecturer to go to different colleges and universities throughout the United States, teaching about HIV and AIDS. And then Janine became an AIDS educator as well. So a lot of good came from this. And then in 1992, Janine and I were chosen to go to Russia with about 8 other people to teach AIDS education over there to doctors, to clergymen, to teachers, and to the laymen, and to students. And we had 200 to 250 people at this conference for a week, which we educated them on. And then they went out to their areas throughout Russia to educate the other people about that. And then I went to Japan and taught in Japan. And then I went to Europe and taught in Europe as well. So good things happened from that. And I felt very blessed to be able to do this side by side with Janine from time to time. And we did have occasionally, not very often, but we did have occasionally people in the audience that heard us speak or something that would rip me apart. What were you, some kind of a whore? What were you? What were you? I mean, just ripping me apart. And that was really hard on Janine, but we tried to stay as strong as we could. In 1996, still living in LA, I heard in meditation, my child, It's time for you to leave the AIDS community and move to the Red Rocks. Excuse me, I'm ahead of myself. It's time for you to move out of LA and leave the AIDS community. So Janine and I decided to move. It was her last year of high school. She was getting ready to graduate. And the day after she graduated from high school, we moved an hour outside of LA to a place called Westlake Village. And we were right on the lake, and it was very peaceful and serene. And I love the environment. It was nice not going to board meetings, because I was on the board of directors of APLA and other places. And I was on the HIV Planning Council, and I was on the Women's Caucus, and going to all these meetings and stuff. And so it was nice not to be involved with the AIDS community and just focus on Janine and I. And then after living there for 1 year, I heard a meditation. My child, it's now time for you to move to the Red Rocks for a healing. And I scouted around, excuse me, trying to find out where the Red Rocks were. So I went to Colorado Springs, and I enjoyed the Red Rocks there, but I heard that's not the place. And on the way home on the plane, somebody said, if you're looking for the Red Rocks, go to St. George, Utah. And outside of St. George is a place called Kayenta. So I heard that. And then within a matter of a week, I had to go to New York for a speaking engagement. And at the conference, I was talking about moving to the Red Rocks. And a guy there, a stranger in the presentation, he says, if you want to go to the Red Rocks, go to St. George, Utah, and there's a place called Kayenta. So that was the second one. And then on the way home, on the plane, again, somebody said, sitting next to me said, St. George, Utah. So within a week of getting back from New York, I got a call from somebody outside of St. George in Hurricane that had a holistic center or retreat center. And they asked me to come out and apply to teach body, mind, spirit modalities. So I went out there and I had my interview, and it was okay, but I didn't feel like I really wanted to do that. I mean, I love teaching mind, body, and spirit, but I didn't feel a connection. But I thought on the way home, what I would do is drive by St. George and into Kayenta. And the moment I drove up the hill into Kayenta, I mean, I just burst into tears and cried. And I knew this is home. This is truly home. There were red rocks just surrounding the entire part of the housing area. All the houses blended into the rocks, the red rocks. In the winter, there were like 11 waterfalls that came down. Excuse me. And so I moved to St. George, Utah, and Janine came and she moved in with me for like 3 months, and then she moved back to LA. And then I got involved with the AIDS community in St. George. I cannot leave it. So I got involved with the AIDS community in St. George. And then in 1996, I came down with PCP, pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, which was the #1 leading cause of death amongst people that got infected. I was admitted to the hospital, and I told the nurse and the doctor I would not take any medication, and they said I really needed it. And I says, I'm not going to. And so I signed a waiver that I would not take any medication for that. And then next morning in meditation, I heard, my child, it's time for you to take the medication. When they give it to you and place it in your hand, thank the doctors, thank the pharmaceutical company, thank the researchers, thank the nurses, thank everybody that has had anything to do with this medication. And as you take it, or even as in the IV, as you take it, have it help you heal your body. You know, see it as medicine, see it as light, see it as love. So I ended up starting taking the medication for PCP and healed myself. That I shouldn't say healed myself. I got over PCP and was back home. And not long after that, I came down with MAI, which is a Macrobacteria, which is basically a disease that is known as part of the AIDS virus, that it's a wasting syndrome. It's severe diarrhea, vomiting, wasting, kind of memory loss. And I was admitted into the hospital, and I couldn't eat because everything I ate, I kept throwing up and throwing up. So they put a catheter in my chest to feed me. And in a year, I was in the hospital more than out of a hospital for a whole year. And at one point, I was so severe that they had to air flight me up to Salt Lake City University Hospital to care for me, which I was up there for 3 months. And when I got back to St. George, I was back in the hospital again. And still not recovered or anything, still on my medicine, still throwing up, still diarrhea, still wasting, got down to 86 pounds. And things were so confusing for me that I didn't really know what was going on. I knew I was dying. I knew that. And I didn't like people coming to visit me. And I asked my therapist that I knew before I was in the hospital, I asked her to put a note on my door. If you're going to visit Sharon, limit to 5 or 10 minutes. Ask her if she needs anything, if she wants a massage, if she wants water, if she needs anything. Otherwise, sit and be quiet unless she wants to have the conversation. Before I had her do that, people would come in and they would talk about anything and everything, and they'd bring in the boom box and play music. And as I was getting weaker and weaker and weaker and getting closer to death, I mean, we're talking like a month away, the distraction and the noise just interfered with my healing and interfered with my peace of mind. And I did not have my mom or my dad or my daughter around me. I did not have them come see me. I would talk to them on the phone, but I did not want them to see me the way I was. And then my doctor called my daughter and my mom and dad and said that I probably wouldn't make it through the weekend. And my daughter came in and she was at the hospital room door, and she looked at me and she did not even recognize me. And then I cracked a smile and she ran to me, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." And she started crying and I started crying and she hugged me, and the nurse put the bars down on the bed, and she crawled in bed with me. And we were spooning and hugging each other and kissing each other. And I was so weak, I could hardly even talk. But telepathically, we talked a lot. And she asked the nurse and doctor if she could spend the night with me. And she did spend the night with me. And the next morning, when she woke up, she had breakfast and she said, "Mom, I'm going to go to your house and take a shower. When I get back, is there anything you want when I come back?" And I only had the energy, don't know where it came from, but I had the energy to say, "Yes, you to come home to me, come back to me." And the moment she walked out of the hospital room, immediately my spirit lifted out of my body, and I was looking down at my body below. And then 2 spirit beings came towards me, not my spirit guides, but a male and a female. And I could see them, yet I could see through them. And they said that they wanted to show me a review of my life. And instantly, I have a bird's eye view where I'm looking down in LA, working with the gay men, teaching mind, body, spirit, working in Russia and different places, and some scenes with Janine. And in each scene, they said, "Look at the difference you've made in these people's lives." Then all of a sudden, I see and feel myself going through the tunnel of light. And there's gray beings on the outside of the tunnel. It felt like they wanted to grab a hold of me to get into the tunnel. I couldn't see any faces. It was just like an outline of gray beings. But I felt this pressure wanting to get in, to grab a hold of me, to be pulled into it. And as I'm going through the tunnel of light, I'm thinking, where are Tommy and Raymond? Where are my brothers that have died so long ago? Where are all my friends that have died from AIDS? And then all of a sudden, the brilliant, bright light of God or infinite spirit came before me, and I became one. And this immense love was once again within me and around me, and we became one. And I heard, "My child, unlike the time before, this time you have a choice. You can remain with me or you can return. But before you make your decision, I want to show you one more thing. And instantly, I'm reliving, not reviewing like a bird's eye view, I'm reliving physically being pregnant with my daughter, feeling the very first kick with my daughter, giving birth to my daughter, and doing things with my daughter throughout the 18 years of her life. And then a spark of light hit me, and I was back in the tunnel of light, and the light of God said, "What is your decision?" And in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm healed, I'm at one, I'm at peace, I'm with God. And I said, I need to return to my daughter. And instantly, I was back in the hospital bed. And for the next hour or so, I could see the cells in my body bouncing up and down like 7-Up bubbles, bouncing up and down with light. And I knew that that was healing me. And I knew before long I'd be out of the hospital. And when Janine came back from being at my home after taking a shower, she came into the room. I had much more color. I could talk. I got out of bed that day and I walked around the hospital. And before long, I was out of the hospital again. My journey to recovering took long because I was so weak and because I was so sick, but I had a new beginning. And I asked, what is my purpose now? And I heard your purpose now is to break the silence about death and dying and bring back the sacredness of life and death. And I said, well, how do I do that? And I heard, write your books. So I wrote my first book, Sacred Living, Sacred Dying, A Guide to Embracing Life and Death, which is a book on which I worked with the gay guys on to create their legacy, ask questions about their life story, and then create a memorial that represents their life story. As an example, one of the guys loved gambling. So what we did after hearing his story, what he wanted was to have everybody go to Las Vegas, giving everybody $250, have them gamble, have them have a reception and stuff like that. But that's what he wanted. Another guy that I worked with, what he wanted, he was a golfer, and he wanted his memorial to be on the golf course at sunset. And we found out that he could do it at sunrise, but not sunset. So we arranged that beforehand when he died, that's what would happen. And he wrote out that he would give his golf cart to somebody, and he wrote out the message for that person. He'd give his golf clubs to another guy, and he'd say that with my golf clubs, now I will see you get a hole in one. And then he had a reception up at the country club. And then he had golf balls engraved with his name and his birth date and death. He didn't die at that time, but this is what we planned. And then on the backside of the golf club was no slice in the afterlife. So I created the book, Sacred Living, Sacred Dying. And then I said, well, Spirit, Infinite Spirit, what do you want me to do now? It said, create another book, write your book about all the healing modalities that you've taught around the world. So that was my second book. There's more, the Integrated Being, Techniques to Heal Your Mind, Body, Spirit. And then when I was done with that book, I said, and I asked every day I asked Infinite Spirit, where do you want me to be? What do you want me to do? What do you want to tell me? Use me. So then I asked, what do you want me to do now? And what I heard is create a documentary on near-death experiences, produce one. And I said, I can't do that. I don't know anything about doing that. I cannot do that. And what I heard was, my child, you're not going to do it. We will do it through you. And everything came together with ease and grace. I mean, I had 8 people that I interviewed for the documentary. I had award-winning videographer that cost nothing. We had the editor. Everything came with ease. And it won second place in the Honolulu International Film Festival. So I surrendered and I asked, what now? What now? What now? And after the documentary, I said, what now? And then I heard, write a book on near-death experiences, include all the people in the documentary, and find children and adolescents as well. So I wrote my third book, There's More, 18 Near-Death Experiences. So I found myself on a new journey and a new way of life. And all along is just really surrendering and really listening to Infinite Spirit and know that, I don't have to do it alone. We don't have to do it alone. All we have to do is ask for guidance and it's there for us. So my life is totally transformed. I'm living here on Maui now. I've lived here for 9 years and I'm still active in the AIDS community on a national level, local and national. On the national level, there's a global initiative to end the AIDS epidemic by 2030. And so I'm on the Hawaii committee to help end AIDS by 2030 here in Hawaii. So I'm still very active in AIDS, and I find my peace and calm being down at the beach and being out in nature and just being one with God or with Infinite Spirit. So that's a rough outline of what happened. There's a lot more that goes in. I did call Bill. After I got tested, I called Bill and I said, Bill, I knew it was you on the video that you were infected. And he said, no, it wasn't. And I'm sorry. So he said, no, he wasn't. But then I was out on tour and I came back and Bill left a message that he wanted to talk to me, and I called him. And he says, Sharon, you need to be tested. It was me on the video and I am dying and you need to be tested. And I said, Bill, I have been tested and I'm fine. I did not want him to die knowing that he had infected me. And he said, good. And so I hung up the phone. And then as soon as I was done, I heard, my child, you need to tell him the truth. So I called him back and I said, Bill, I need to tell you the truth. I am infected and you infected me and I knew it was you. And he says, well, at least you're not dying. And he hung up the phone. And that was the last conversation I had with him. I was back on tour again and he left me a message a few days later. And he says, I want you to call me back. And I truly believe by the time I got back from being out on tour, he had died. And I truly believe that he wanted to call and ask for forgiveness. So I called in his spirit, and I called forth his spirit and my spirit to speak to one another. And I said, I have forgiven you. I have forgave you a long time ago, and I felt at peace with that. So I lived my life with joy, with purpose, with gratitude, deepest of gratitude and love. And I just feel so richly rewarded to be able to share my story with you and with other people that here in IONS. I had a choice to return. Some people don't get that choice. And I know we have some people here in IONS here in Hawaii that didn't get the choice to return, that were forced to come back. And they're angry and they don't feel like they're balanced in between the worlds. They feel like they're separated. There's a separation, but they're very angry. I'm not angry. I'm at peace. I made that decision. So I feel very blessed for that. So that's kind of it. So I'd like to open it up to any questions.
There we are. I'm unmuted. Let me go to the gallery so we could see everybody.
Okay.
Your story is huge, and you present it in a very clear, concise manner, which is understandable.
Thank you, Kathy.
And it's huge to me. It's overwhelming. And the main thing that I came from it is telling the truth. Because when you keep things bottled up inside of you, it comes out in other ways.
Absolutely, I agree.
And telling the truth is the most important thing that has cleared up my whole life.
I'm glad to hear that, Kathy. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it is so important.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I have a comment.
Linda has a comment. You want to speak into the camera here? Okay, I'll repeat what you say if you can't speak it loudly enough.
Okay. What you said to your medicine, the gratitude you expressed, really resonates with this group, because that's one of Dick's themes. We give gratitude, and that really resonated with that. I'm gonna keep it.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, it's just, anything you're taking down, medicine can be very toxic. But when you take the vibration, or you take the energy or your thought or your intention of it to help heal you, and the toxin's not, hurting you as much, or however, just be in gratitude of the researchers and the doctors and the pharmaceutical and everything. So thank you for sharing that, Linda.
It's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara has a comment.
Okay, thank you, Barbara.
The thing that resonated for me was that, well, many things did, because I've experienced similar experiences, and the thing that really spoke to me was when you got to the point where you were dying and you had a choice. And I've been there, didn't realize I was dying, but this says to me that we do have that choice, and we can make it one way or another, depending on what we need.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you.
Someone else have a comment or a question?
When you were little.
Okay, this is Petra.
Okay.
And you said, you think they were spirit guides that was helping you deal with your grandfather's abuse? Why do you think? Do you think it's just your soul's development that you are open to these experiences with spirit guides? Because most of us don't have that.
Right.
So why do you think that you were able to have that experience?
I just think that, I don't know. I think that basically she came to me basically so I would not have to feel the pain and go through the physicalness of it. But she also came to teach me, about how to communicate with the other kingdoms, and how we're all connected and we're all one. So perhaps she's been my guide for many, many years. I mean, she's still with me, but I mean, before that, if you believe in past lives, perhaps, I don't know. I know Vera Coach has been with me through past lives, but Laura, I don't know if she has or not. I've never asked her even. But it was really a blessing to not have to, I mean, of course, after being physically abused every time I saw my grandfather, I felt the pain, but as it was happening, I wasn't. I was aware of it, and I remember it, and I can still see it, and I know the steps that led up to it and what happened to me, but I wasn't in the moment of the pain of it.
Other questions or comments? I have a few.
Sure, Dick.
When I first heard your story, Sharon, what impressed me was the sense of mission that you were given, and the healing that accompanied that mission. It seemed to me that God wanted you to be in good health and able to enable you to complete your mission. The two go together.
Right.
People don't often think of this, but you're a servant of God, and God wanted you to be healthy enough to do what you did. And you saw what you did when you had your out-of-body experience. You saw everybody and the difference that you'd made in their lives.
Correct.
That is amazing. The second thing that, the next thing that I thought was really important that you said today was about taking medications. We're not very friendly with medications in our community. We think of big pharma and the abuse that is caused by all that, but you have given a positive view of this. to pray over your medications and to envision them doing the right thing in your body.
Right.
We have a local minister who has a healing ministry, and he had said the same thing to us years ago. And so you have repeated it, and thank you for that.
Thank
You
you.
have done many, you have had many experiences that are worth noting and would be of benefit to people in your audience about a near-death experience, that life continues beyond, that we have guidance and protection, that there's help in abuse, that you can recover from divorce, all of those things. I appreciate also your direct messages that you got from the source, from how did you pronounce Vanath?
Viracocha.
Okay, the
Viracocha.
creator of all. All right. So I think your message that you will be a teacher, a healer, and an author certainly came true. And you have taught us today.
It
I
sure
wonder if
did.
anyone else has any comments or questions for you before I continue.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you.
I appreciate your vision of your cells of your body rejuvenating after your session with God. People don't think such things are possible, but you've demonstrated that these are possible and they can happen. And I like the way you said you surrendered to God, and I recommend that everybody do the same thing. Surrender to God daily. Say, what are God and I going to do together today?
Love
And
it.
be open to the guidance of that, and God will empower and heal and enable. I believe that's what we're here for. And of course, that's the greatest joy, is serving together and doing something together with God. And all of us have that opportunity simply by helping the people who come into our path.
Definitely.
You talked about your coming up over the hill and seeing the village and the red rocks of the village, and you knew that you were home. I wonder if you came into any awareness that you had lived in that community before.
It had the feeling that I probably had. I never explored that. This is really, I got to share this. Before I moved there, after I saw that place, I kept going back and back because I knew I wanted to live there, and I was trying to find a place to rent or to buy. And there was one point where there was an eagle, and I'm not kidding you. There was an eagle at Kayenta, at the beginning of Kayenta, driving up the road. There was an eagle. It had to have been 10 feet high. I mean, it was an eagle. And I definitely knew then, this is a message from God. This is where I belong. But as soon as the very first time I was there, I knew that that was home. It definitely was home. Yeah. And now Maui is.
Tell us more about hearing from guides and from God. How did this happen for you, and what could people do to increase their communication with their guides and with God?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Dick. So what I did when I was in the hospital, what I did is Viracocha told me to get a notebook and write, what do you want to tell me at this time? Viracocha, what do you want to tell me at this time? And he said, set aside your ego, your fears, your concerns to hear the truth. It's for your highest good and the highest good of all concerned. So then I wrote down, Viracocha, what do you want to tell me at this time? And all of a sudden, words came into my mind that were not my words. And I started writing it down and writing it down and writing it down. And I cannot even begin to tell you how many notebooks I have from Viracocha. But after doing that, I was able to understand and listen to his voice. Sometimes it was so faint, I said, please speak up louder. I can't hear you. Speak up louder, please. So then he would. And then I was going to say, after a while, I didn't have to write those notes anymore. I would just say, Viracocha, what do you want to tell me at this time? And I would hear his voice speak to me. It didn't matter. I didn't have to be in a meditative state. I could be driving a car. I could be walking in the forest. I could be walking anywhere. It didn't matter what I was doing. I would just ask and hear his voice. But I think for most people, if they begin by writing and asking for that divine guidance, that it will come to them. But it's important to say, I set aside my ego, my fears, my concerns to hear the truth. It's for my highest good and the highest good of all concerned. Because sometimes something that's for your highest good may not be for the highest good of somebody else. So you want it for the highest good of everybody concerned. So I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. And another way is through meditation, just being in meditation and, you know, silencing the mind as much as you can, and ask spirit to come through you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Those modalities have been expressed by other people for
Oh, good.
automatic writing and of course meditation. But I thank you for explaining what happened with you. And that's good. Any other comments or questions from anyone?
Sharon, is there a simple process or method that we can use to meet our spirit guide?
There is. It's a visualization that I teach, but it's actually also in Shakti Gawain's book. God, I can't remember what the name. Shakti Gawain visualization. But what it is, basically what it is you set aside your fears, all that, and then you go into meditation, just basically silencing yourself. And you imagine yourself walking down any kind of path. It doesn't matter if you're at the ocean. It doesn't matter if you're in a field. It doesn't matter if you're in a street, something that brings you pleasure and peacefulness, or outer space, whatever it is. And you imagine yourself walking down this path, and you notice everything on the side of it. You know, there may be flowers, there may be a stream, there may be animals. Just notice what's on this path. And as you continue walking down the path, feeling peaceful, feeling calm, feeling relaxed, and continue walking, noticing what you're hearing, noticing what you're seeing, or what you're sensing. Maybe you don't have visual, maybe you don't have audio, maybe you just sense things. So whatever you're sensing. And then imagine, sense, or see a white light come before you. And this white light is there in front of you, and you may be able to see a being within that white light, or you may not. And ask this being, what is your name? And remember it or write it down. Say, what are you here to teach me? What are my lessons? How is it best for me to communicate with you? And then ask, what gift do you have for me? And this being, or this light, or whatever it is, whatever you see, will have a gift for you. Take that gift in your hand and say, how do you want me to use this gift? What is it for? And then say, now, what do you want to tell me at this time? And just listen, be still, and let your thoughts go, but just be still within that being, within that presence, and just let those, whatever comes, what do you want to tell me? What else do you want to tell me? What else do you want to tell me? And then if you have a question, say, I have a question for you. How do I da 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 da? What do I need to know about da 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 da? How do I whatever? And listen for your answer. And know that if you don't get an answer right away, probably within 3 days, you'll probably get an answer through a sign, through somebody talking, through a song or something. You'll hear that answer. And then thank that being, that light, whatever you see, thank it for coming to you. Ask them their name. And if you don't understand what their name is, say, can you please spell it to me? Can you please say it to me clearly? And if you're in that sense of being with the spirit or with the light, and you can't hear them very loud, again, say, I can't hear you very loud. Will you please speak up louder? Tell them what you need. You know, they may, you just have to tell them what you need. I need you to speak slower. I need you to speak clearer. I need you to speak louder. I need to hear you. And then after you're complete with that, just say, thank you for coming to me. I will come to you often, and I'm in great appreciation. And then see yourself turning around, walking down the path, back out the path, and then out. So that's one way to get in touch with your spirit guides.
Beautiful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Someone else have a comment or a question?
One more. Sharon, you were guided to move to Utah. Were you guided equally to move to Maui?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Repeat it.
Were you guided equally to move to Maui as you were to Utah?
Oh, Maui, I moved to Maui in 1970. I moved to Maui after being married to Janine's dad. We lived in Japan for 2 years, and then we moved to Maui. And as soon as I got to Maui, excuse me, as soon as I got off the plane, I knew I was home on Maui. And I lived here almost 10 years. And when Janine was 4 years old, I met a man. Tom and I had divorced, and Janine, I met a man that lived in LA and fell in love with him. So I moved off the island and we moved to LA. And then I moved to San Diego after that, and then Utah. But I mean, LA and then Utah and then San Diego. When I moved to San Diego, I was there for 11 years. And I knew I always wanted to come back to Maui, and I didn't know how. I didn't know what I would do. And what I heard was, you will help a gentleman create a green burial site on Maui. And so I contacted a guy over here, Bodie B, and he was in setting up or planning to set up a green burial site here on Maui. So I helped him, work with him for 3 years. But before that happened, I didn't know when I was coming. And then on my birthday, November 30th, I said, I will be in Maui by February 14th for Valentine's Day. That is going to be my gift to me. Nothing is going to stop me. I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. So what I did, I started listening to Hawaiian music every day instead of the music in San Diego. Started listening to Hawaiian music. I changed my phone number to Hawaii phone number and started getting my vibration, had a vision board of Hawaii and stuff in Maui. And I knew I wanted to move back here. And I got off the plane, didn't know where I was going to live. I had rented a hotel room for one night, didn't know what I was going to do. The next day I looked around and I came across a lady that had an ohana, which is like a guest cottage or a guest home. It's called an ohana in Hawaii. And she had ohana. And I asked her if I could rent it. And she says, no, she says, I'm holding it for somebody that wants it in about 9 months. And I says, well, I'm standing in front of you right now and I can pay you cash in advance. And her eyes kind of lit up and she says, okay. So I immediately got my suitcase out of the hotel room and moved into the unit. And then I had my stuff shipped over to Maui. So this, I've always thought that this would be my dying place, but this is really hard. But since the Maui fires, it's just not the same. It's not Maui. It's devastating. It's devastating. The aloha spirit is gone. There's a lot of greed. The people that have lost their homes, FEMA has come in and said, we will pay landlords $9,000 a month to rent something. Well, that's fine for them, but for the people that, have been living here, now our landlords want to raise the rent. And I have probably, I don't know how many friends of mine have moved off the island because they can no longer afford to live here. And it's been so expensive that businesses have closed down, that restaurants have closed down, that it's very, very difficult to live here. The only thing that keeps me here at the moment is the beach and the nature and my friends. But I don't know. I see myself possibly going to Spain, possibly going to Portugal. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just being open, but it hurts me to know how many thousands of people have had to move off of Maui because of the prices and because there's nothing available to rent and because of the situation over here. It's really devastating. It's really, really hard, but I'm getting a push. It's going to be time to move soon. Yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't know if this is relevant, but, and I don't know the details, because I wasn't paying close attention. It's been in the news yesterday and today that the electrical company on Maui is being sued for billions. And there may be some compensation. I don't know how that's gonna work. But it might benefit the.
Well, yeah, right now, just yesterday, I went and saw a lawyer. We're in a moratorium. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'll talk about it briefly. We're in a moratorium where landlords are not allowed to raise the rent and are not allowed to evict. I've been in this place for 8 years now. Love my landlords. We have dinners together. When I'm on the mainland, they take care of my place. I take care of their place. Very, very close. And they raised my rent last month and said they were going to raise it $350, which I can afford. But the thing is, it's illegal to do that. So I confronted them and I said, you know, we're in a moratorium and you're not allowed to raise the rent. And so they said, well, we're going to give you 45 days to get out and evict me in 45 days. And I got the eviction notice 2 days ago, and I went to an attorney, and the attorney says, just ignore it. They can't raise the price. They can't evict you out. Just keep paying the same price. And the moratorium may go for another month. It may go for another year, but until that moratorium is over, you just keep paying the rent and they can't do anything about it. But in my mind, I know that when that moratorium is over, I've got 45 days to get out. And it's like, where am I going to go? I've been looking and there's nothing that I can afford. There's just nothing here. There's nothing here. So unfortunately, the governor is not holding the landlords responsible for what they're doing. They're not getting punished in any way.
Wow.
So it's really bad. Yeah.
I love Hawaii, but I love Spain too, so.
Ooh, well, hey, I'd like to talk to you about Spain.
Yeah,
Can you give Dick your number so I can talk to you sometime about Spain?
Oh, I'd love to, yeah. I
Thank
spent
you.
a year in Madrid and I've been back several times.
I'd like that. Thank you.
Hey, can you ask if you ever consider another island like Kauai close by?
Hawaii?
Speak up, Jeff.
Have you ever considered going to another island like Kauai?
Hawaii is too isolated for me and too rainy for me. And the big island is, I'm a beach person. I mean, I love to be in the ocean. And on the big island, most of the beaches are lava. And it's very, very rural. Maui's not built up like Honolulu. I could never move to Honolulu because that's like living in LA or somewhere else where you got 6 lanes of freeways and everything else. So Maui is home until there's something else. So there would not be another island here in Hawaii. But again, it might, you know, I've talked to my daughter about Portugal and about Spain, and she has a home in Iceland. And so I could live there during the summer, but not the winter. Definitely not the winter.
Beaches.
How about Lanai?
Lanai, I don't know. No,
Too-
there's
Too remote.
very rough. And
Yeah.
you have to take the ferry over. And the ferry, because of the fires, is not going out of Lahaina now. It's going out of Malaya, and it doesn't go over very often. But there's, you know, that'd be real tough on me. I got to have people around too.
Yeah.
But thank you for your suggestions. I appreciate it.
I don't know how the prices compare, but Virginia Beach is to be a safe place. And we've experienced some weather, but it is generally a safe place. You might think about looking at Virginia Beach.
And what is the weather like there, Dick?
Right now it's hot.
this week and the previous week, we've had temperatures, the temperature index is over 100. But
Ooh.
generally, it's cooler. We have some snow and ice in the winter, but it generally melts quickly.
Really?
It's about the southernmost place in the United States where deciduous trees will grow. So, and it's pleasant. We don't have, we have had some side swipes from hurricanes. We've had a couple of isolated tornadoes. We have not had earthquakes. We don't have flooding because we're at the coast where flooding isn't going to affect us. There might be some coastal flooding with storms, but in general, Edgar Casey said it would be a safe place to live.
Really?
With the earth changes happening, and we don't have fires like they do out west.
Right.
So I'm glad to be in a safe place. So someplace you might consider. And if you come to be among us, you could join our NDE community here.
Thank you,
I'm sure
Dick.
they have AIDS problems here also. Sure of it.
I have a guest room with a private bath.
What's that?
You tell her.
Linda says she has a guest room with a private bath.
Thank you so much. Well, I am going down to Florida sometime this year, so maybe I'll stop up in Virginia Beach and check you guys out. That would be nice.
That would be neat.
Dick has my permission to give you my phone number.
Absolutely. You please do give me.
I will send it to you.
Thank you.
Sharon, do you teach any courses such as for connecting with guides or meditation or automatic writing?
I used to, Dick, when I was in LA, but I'm not doing it here on Maui. Yeah, but I used to do it a lot. Yeah.
Right. And where are your books available?
They're on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, Amazon. Or they can go to my website, sacredlife.com. and see all that's another thing I was guided to do, start a publishing company. It's like, what? So I have about 50 authors that I've published their books for. So, and I'm finishing my life story at the moment. I shouldn't say that. I should, it would be for my highest good to finish my life story at the moment.
Right.
I'm dangling a little slow on that one.
Any other questions or comments from anyone?
Keep going with your life story. It's very satisfying once you finish it. I know, I've done mine.
Thank you. My daughter's actually producing a documentary on my life story. We're working on that right now. So I've got to
Love
get
to
the
see it.
done before the documentary comes out. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. What is the name of your story, of your life story, Kathy?
Just a minute. The title of it is it's out of my head right now. I can't think.
That's a great story. That's a great title. It's not in my head right now. I can't think.
It starts with the assassination of Jack Kennedy, and
Ooh,
it's I had a choice of staying in Seattle and marrying the love of my life, who could never have children, or follow my dream and live into New York and move to New York City. And I followed my dream.
so you moved to New York.
I moved to New York City, and then all the things that happened from the 60s on as I lived in New York City is in this story.
Great. Well, when you think of the title, maybe you can let Dick know and I'll get the name of it.
I don't know why my head is I can remember the introduction, but I can't remember the title.
That's okay.
I've got it here. I'll
No
get it.
problem, Kathy. No problem.
I can't think of it right now.
No problem.
Oh, I got it. Let's see. I got it right here.
Okay.
And the title of it is because it came out, I wasn't thinking in terms of that. To the rising suns and colorful sunsets.
Ooh, that's nice. That's nice.
That was the title of it.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
I don't know why. Sometimes when I'm suddenly have to pull up something, my mind goes blank.
Me too. Me too.
Me three.
And it was a sudden thing, and you know, I've been tuned into what you're saying, and not thinking at all of things I've done. I've been so tuned into your story because it is very powerful,
Well, thank you for sharing that.
and I've really been connected with all the things you're saying.
Thank you.
We're recording this to the Zoom cloud, and anyone here who would like to receive a copy can receive it without extra charge because you've already attended. And if you'd like to send it to someone else, that's fine. And we're going to make it available to everybody in the future. Is there any last comments or questions from anyone? Then Sharon, I wonder if you have any last summary of message for anybody here.
What I hear is you're all deeply loved and blessed. That's what I hear. So I'll share that. Yeah. That you're all deeply loved and blessed. And Dick, I want to thank you for having the IANDS group and for bringing them together, because I know it's a safe space and a healing space, and it's definitely needed. So I appreciate you and thank you. And I look forward to hearing from anybody. If you want to write me, it's Sharon, SHARON, @sacredlife.com.
Sharon at sacredlife.com. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay,
S
got it.
SACRED. Sometimes people say scared. It's not scared. It's sacred.
Shared life, SHARED. Sharon at shared, SHARED life.com.
Sharon at Sacred Life.
Oh, sacred, SACRED.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
Got it.
Thank you then. Are we ready to say goodbye for today?
Well, I want to thank everybody. Many blessings to you, and maybe we meet sometime back there in Virginia Beach. Thank you, Dick. Thank you, everyone. Mahalo from Maui.